So Turkey has to play that major role.
Helena and Steve, briefly, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions.
Yes. I think there needs to be a negotiation, preferably sooner rather than later, because a negotiation is the only way to channel and bring together all the energies of the Syrian people into starting to think, how are we going to build a constitutional future, as a stable order for ourselves. Honestly, I come back to this point that personalizing this around, the Assads is very unhelpful for a number of reasons. Therefore, I don't think what the kind of negotiation I'm talking about should not be a negotiation for an exit strategy. It should be a negotiation for how do we build a functioning constitutional democracy based on human equality in Syria. What does it take in terms of reforming civil-military relations, reforming the way that the military upper echelons are formed, and so on and so forth, and that the Ba'ath Party leadership, including the Assads, have to be invited to be part of this negotiation. If they are cut out of it, then they cannot bring along the people that they need to bring along. And, you couldn't have done the negotiation the transition to a full democracy in South Africa if you'd said, this is a negotiation about how to get Frederick de Klerk, exiled to St. Helena Island. You had to bring him in so that he could bring along people. There were people in the Afrikaner community who didn't come along, but he was able to bring along enough of them, and they had enough of a true nationalist commitment to the country they led to be prepared to share power within it. Whereas there was the extreme on the Afrikaner side wanted to make a teeny-weeny all-white Afrikaner enclave. And they didn't get enough support in their own white community for that concept. So, this is deeply political. There are, I'm sure, forces within the Alawite community that would say, if we can't have the whole country, let's just, retire to the Alawite mountain and fight from there, have a strategic link with the Maronites, who knows. But I think that we need to bring along the present leadership. When de Klerk agreed to the one person, one vote, that first big negotiation, he honestly thought that the National Party would win it. But they didn't. And then he graciously stepped aside.
Very, very quickly. Can I just...
Let's see.
Okay. Right.
No,
Sorry.
Helena, your mic. There we go.
the kind of national dialogue that Helena outlined, I think, would be enormously desirable. I don't have a sense of how we get there from here in the midst of a crisis. And so I would focus on possibilities for some kind of an exit strategy that would secure a transition of power away from Bashar al-Assad and his immediate family and allies. And I see the prospects for that kind of an exit strategy as being extraordinarily low for a number of reasons. First, the profile of that exit strategy, the terms of the strategy are very clear at this point. They include amnesty, they include security, and they include provisions that would permit retention of assets. And what we have seen around the region is that there is not a single model in which those conditions have been met in a fashion that would persuade an existing incumbent to leave office. And I actually feel that the experience of Hosni Mubarak, his imprisonment, his prosecution, the escalation of charges being brought against him, somewhat similar case for bin Ali, served as an enormous negative incentive for anyone else who might be considering negotiating an exit strategy. And my view in response to Kate's explicit question about sanctions, I do not believe that sanctions will be able to affect the strategic calculus of authoritarian elites on these matters, because the enforcement capacity of the international community in regard to those agreements is zero. And so my own sense is that we are in a position in which the Assads have made a strategic decision that exit is not a viable strategy. I don't know what it would take to change that, but I suspect it would need to come from inside and not from outside of Syria.
Just 2 points very quickly here. First of all, we cannot really transform a frog into a bull. We cannot transform an Assad into a de Klerk. They don't have the political maturity for that. We really need to take the personalities under consideration. We are not dealing, we have to realize that in the final analysis we are dealing with a Corleone situation. We're dealing really with a mafia situation. We are not dealing with the political elite with that kind of sense of maturity and accountability to a wider base. De Klerk was accountable to a wider base. The Assads are not. They hold the wider base accountable to them, including their own supporters in the Alawite sect or anywhere in the country. So they personalized it. They've made it into an Assad-based cult. They've created that cult of personality. In 2007, when there was sort of a referendum, there was no political program. There was no program of reform that Assad said, look, you vote for me again, you say yes to me, and this is what I'll be doing over the next 7 years. The only slogan was, we love you. That is what the Syrian people were expected to do, to go down the street and say, we love you. That's why right now, in fact, the protesters are saying, we hate you, go ahead and take your party with you. So it's the personalization is there. We cannot ignore it. We cannot ignore the personality cult. We cannot ignore the psychology of the people, of the actors involved. That's why the Assad cannot be part of that. We are hoping that there will be less of this kind of mentality on part of the Ba'ath elite, on part of other army generals, even though, frankly, they could just be photocopies of Assad themselves. This is basically the question that we need to raise. Regarding what you said on exit strategy, I believe that, in fact, the Gaddafi and Mubarak experiments can be looked at differently. One, Mubarak, to the last, he really didn't say, like, I'm retiring. He was really forced out. And that's why he was in this position. Had he really retired, had he said at the last speech that, look, okay, I'm leaving, I think the situation would have been different completely. Gaddafi also, the reason he is in this position is because he refused every offer of exit strategy. So I think this is how you really need to approach the Assad, is tell them, don't follow in the footsteps of Mubarak and Gaddafi. They closed the door behind themselves and made it very difficult for them to be treated honorably. Bin Ali, to an extent, even could have been treated better had he simply sort of left and did not wait for the army to sort of impose a solution on him. You are in a position to chart your own exit strategy. You're doing it from a position of relative strength and legitimacy, semi-legitimacy, at least in the eyes of those people who still call on Assad to reform. So don't waste that opportunity. I think this is the line that Erdogan can use and other people can use when they engage the Assad, is that you still have the ability to write an exit scenario that's honorable for you. And even though a lot of us will hate it, and will criticize it vehemently, but I think we will end up endorsing it for the sake of a country. So yeah, the Gaddafi and Mubarak examples can be looked at in different ways.
Thank you. We don't have a lot of time. We'll take 3 questions in a row. We're going to start on this side with Barbara, and then after Barbara, 2 others on that side. There's the individual in the back and next to him.